I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a bombshell from Pope Benedict XVI. He is stepping down as leader of 1 billion Roman Catholics around the world. And a judge said no to the Plaza de Panama, but one city official isn't ready to take that as a final answer.
I'm Amitha Sharma. Is drug violence declining in Mexico? It's not just a simple yes or no answer. We'll have a look at what's changing south of the border.
Mayor Bob Filner's planned office in Tijuana is running into some delays. We'll have a look at what's going on. And time is running out for a La Jolla landmark. We'll belly up to the Whaling Bar for some memories. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off tonight. Catholics in San Diego and around the world are stunned tonight by Pope Benedict XVI's announcement that he is resigning for health reasons. The former Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger says he lacks the strength to fulfill his duties. He is the first pope to step down in 600 years.
After having repeatedly examined my conscience before God, I have come to the certainty that my strengths, due to an advanced age, are no longer suited to an adequate exercise of the Petrine ministry.
Pope Benedict is 85. He was elected to the papacy in 2005. The change in Rome means change in San Diego. Retiring Bishop Richard Brahm says Pope Benedict's resignation was a surprise, but not completely unexpected. The Pope had hinted he would step down if unable to perform his duties.
I would say let us join the Pope himself in praying that the College of Cardinals will come up with a worthy successor who can continue to address the concerns not only of the Church but of the world at this point in history.
Brahm says the College of Cardinals will choose the next Pope, and that will happen shortly after the Pope leaves office.
Any cardinal who enters into that conclave is what we call popabile. That means electable. So that includes the cardinals from Africa, from Latin America, as well as any other.
With nearly 1 million Catholics in San Diego County and more than 90 parishes, what happens in Rome at the Vatican will have an impact on what happens here.
I don't think it's unsettling. I mean, this Pope has not had the sort of long tenure that JP2 had, has not had the sort of real devotion that JP2 had, and he's been more of a quieter pope. He has not been in the public view to the extent that John Paul II was.
Susie Polikababka is an assistant professor of theology and religious studies at USD. She says this is an opportunity for change, like women in the priesthood or the wider social issue of gay marriage. But she says she isn't sure that will happen.
All of the appointees in the College of Cardinals have all come from John Paul II or the current Pope. So it's a situation where they're all in that same doctrinal, authoritarian, hardline attitude.
Polikababka is curious whether there were any underlying issues surrounding the Pope's resignation. She says we'll have to wait and see if something comes up. PBS NewsHour will have more on the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI coming up at 7 o'clock. The Riverside County District Attorney has filed a capital murder charge against the accused triple murderer, Christopher Dorner, making him eligible for the death penalty. He is still at large, and police say they've gotten more than 600 tips since offering a $1 million reward. Dorner is accused of killing a Riverside police officer last week. He's also suspected of killing 2 other people in Irvine as revenge for being fired from the Los Angeles Police Department. One of the victims was the daughter of an LAPD captain connected to Dorner's case. The slain officer in Riverside, meanwhile, has been identified as a former Camp Pendleton Marine. Mike Crane joined the Riverside Force 11 years ago after serving 2 deployment tours in Kuwait as a Marine. Sheriff's deputies did extra patrols today outside a middle school in Poway after a student allegedly threatened to open fire on campus. The threat came in as an email sent to an administrator at Twin Peaks Middle School. The email was traced to a 12-year-old boy who was taken into custody. A plan to revamp Balboa Park's Plaza de Panama might still have some life left in it. A judge struck down the plan, saying it violated a municipal code because it included changes to the Cabrillo Bridge. Today, City Council President Todd Gloria sent a memo to the city attorney asking for advice on legal and legislative options to revive the project. It could include granting a municipal code exemption to the plan. San Diego Mayor Bob Filner has won the battle over the city's port appointments. Today, the City Council failed to override his veto of 2 appointments. Filner said the selection process was flawed, and he wanted the appointments to wait until a new District 4 council member is elected. That election is scheduled for next month. Filner promises his new Tijuana office, meanwhile, will be opening soon, but there have been a couple of hiccups so far. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr checks in on the status of the office and what it's designed to do.
Throughout his campaign, San Diego Mayor Bob Filner championed his plan to improve relations with Mexico. He touted his experience working on border issues while in Congress and the relationships he's built with Mexican leaders. At campaign rallies, people would chant his name in Spanish. And the momentum culminated at his State of the City address when Filner officially announced when his Tijuana office would open.
You know, the opening of a border affairs office in Tijuana is going to be just the first step in building a partnership to coordinate border infrastructure improvements and to market our binational region to international investments. In fact, today we have secured an office which will open on February 1st.
That date has come and gone, and no ribbon has yet been cut. In fact, a visit to the Tijuana high-rise on February 1st revealed few people there even knew who Filner was, much less that he was supposed to have an office in the building. Eventually, we were told that Filner would have access to the building, but wouldn't have a physical office there. Filner insists the office will open soon. KPBS is currently waiting for a copy of the lease. The fact that Filner's attempt to open an office in Tijuana hasn't gone smoothly could serve as a metaphor for the relationship between San Diego and Tijuana. Many good intentions with uncertain results. But entrepreneur Jordi Munoz says an office could be beneficial to the business relationship between the cities. He's president of 3D Robotics, which designs and manufactures drones for personal use.
We just opened a new maquiladora, that stands for a Mexican factory in Tijuana.
Munoz employs 25 people in that factory and 30 people at his research and design facility in San Diego. He says right now, all of the company's resources are going into the Tijuana plant. He had an advantage in setting up his factory because he grew up in Tijuana and knows how the city works. Munoz says a San Diego office in Tijuana could help people who may need a bit more guidance.
Because of the language, the people, the connection, you don't know anything. And when you think about Tijuana, you have probably the wrong perception.
Fixing those perceptions could be another benefit of an office. It's something the Tijuana government has already been attempting to do. The city has had an office in San Diego for years. Alfonso Bustamante, brother of the Tijuana mayor Carlos Bustamante, serves as the city's director of binational affairs. He says the office has tried to repair Tijuana's image following years of violence in the city.
In the past years that we needed somehow to let people know exactly what Tijuana was, not what was being said, that it was not as bad as they were saying.
Bustamante says the office also acts as a liaison between San Diego and Tijuana officials and helps Mexicans who want to do business north of the border. But perhaps the biggest obstacle to improving the relationship between the cities is the physical barrier you must pass through to travel between them. Wait times coming into the U.S. are a major issue for border crossers, sometimes turning a quick trip into an hours-long ordeal if you don't have a special pass. Filner knows this and says he and the Tijuana mayor will do what they can to tackle what's primarily a federal issue.
Congratulations, Mayor Filner. Thank you.
As many before him have, Filner has visions of marketing San Diego and Tijuana as a mega region with easy travel between the two and a collaborative relationship. But first, he has to open the office. Katie Orr, KPBS News.
Violence in Tijuana and the rest of Mexico appears to be dropping. KPBS's Amitha Sharma has more.
Drug violence in Mexico has taken the lives of more than 60,000 people in the last 6 years. There are signs now that the violence may have peaked and is in a downturn, according to a new report from the University of San Diego's Transborder Institute. Octavio Rodriguez, who co-wrote the report, joins me now. Octavio, where has the violence gone down and by how much?
The best example of the decreasing in violence is Ciudad Juarez. Ciudad Juarez has been the most violent city for the last 5 years, and from 2011 to 2012 it decreased around 40%.
And when we are talking about violence, we're talking about homicides, we're talking about murders, correct?
Correct. The best way and the most feasible way to measure violence is through homicides, and that's why we measure the decreasing in the overall rate of homicides.
And Tijuana, which is just across the border, what about violence there? What about murders there? Have they gone down at all?
Well, Tijuana was the second most violent city in 2007, and now it's number 8. So the rate has decreased surprisingly a lot, and things are going much better down there.
So there has also been an increase in violence in other parts of Mexico City, or actually Mexico. What has happened there?
One of the most important characteristics of this new wave of violence in Mexico is the way they're shifting, and the violence is shifting. And violence has moved to some other areas, not the traditional northern border states as it was in the past, and now in places such as the city of Monterrey or the touristic spot of Acapulco in the Pacific Coast. Especially in the Pacific Coast, states as Michoacán, Jalisco, and Guerrero has seen increasing violence in the last 2 and 3 years.
Okay, so what do you attribute both the downturn in violence in places like Ciudad Juarez and Tijuana, and then the upsurge in homicides in other areas?
Well, one of the hypotheses, and I think that's one of the most reliable ones, is that the strategy of the previous administration in cracking down cartels have created splinter groups from it that operates in different areas, and of course because they're smaller, they're less predictable and more violent, and they're moving and they're controlling smaller areas, but also with more amount of power. And that's why we've seen violence moving from one state to another.
Now, cracking down on the drug cartels was the hallmark of former Mexican President Felipe Calderón. The new president, Enrique Peña Nieto, has said that his focus is going to be on crime prevention. What does that mean within the context of drug cartels, drug violence? And is that in any way code for looking the other way?
So President Peña Nieto said, of course, he was going to focus more on prevention of crime, and he pointed out that his administration was going to attack 3 crimes that he considers the most harmful to Mexican society, that is extortion, kidnapping, and homicide. The difference with this administration is that they're not going to put as much attention in cracking organizations and, of course, in informing about violence. But and he has mentioned that the strategy is going to keep the same, at least for the first 3 or 4 years.
Octavio, I want to talk to you about actually getting these figures. How difficult is it to track drug violence?
It has been very difficult. Mexican government released some preliminary data last year, but last year they said they're not going to do that anymore, or they weren't going to do that anymore because they considered that as a sensitive information, and it was dangerous to put that on the access of the public. So
what's happening here? Is the Mexican government trying to change the narrative?
Well, it was the previous government that actually stopped releasing that data, and now the new government is saying that they're gonna try to put attention in some other positive things. What I think they're trying to do is to at least keep the attention out of the problem while they're trying to solve it.
Octavio Rodriguez, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow night, President Barack Obama will deliver the first State of the Union address of his second term. Starting at 6 tomorrow, we'll bring you the PBS coverage of the speech and the Republican response. A freshman congressman from San Diego is joining dozens of his colleagues from both sides of the aisle in a movement for bipartisanship. Democrat Scott Peters is one of a group calling themselves No Labels Problem Solvers. He says they're making State of the Union dates with members of the opposing party so they can sit together during the speech. And he says they'll be wearing a pin that says "Stop Fighting and Start Fixing." A California lawmaker has introduced a bill allowing undocumented immigrants to get driver's licenses as long as they pay taxes, pass driving tests, and get automobile insurance. Similar measures have failed in the past, but the bill's author says he thinks it has a better chance this time. Democratic Assemblyman Luis Alejo says unlicensed drivers are 3 times as likely to cause accidents as those with licenses. You may have seen motorcycle riders doing this in heavy traffic. It's called lane splitting, riding between lanes of cars. California is the only state that allows it, but there haven't been any official guidelines for the practice until now. The Highway Patrol has created the first written guidelines for lane splitting. Bikers are only supposed to go 10 miles per hour faster than the vehicles they're passing, and they're not supposed to lane split if the traffic's going more than 30 miles an hour. The CHP says the number of motorcycle riders has gone up in California, and so has the number of crashes. Researchers in the U.S. now say they found cases of whooping cough that may be resistant to the vaccine. The Centers for Disease Control is reluctant to draw conclusions from the study, but vaccine resistance could be one reason why cases of whooping cough have been increasing. Our KPBS and iNewsSource investigations desk began looking into the whooping cough vaccine more than 2 years ago. Investigations producer Joanne Farian has more.
It was late summer 2010. San Diego County was experiencing what would become the worst whooping cough epidemic in decades. KPBS and iNewsSource learned the vaccine was failing at an unexpected rate. Here's an excerpt from our 2010 documentary, When Immunity Fails, the Whooping Cough Epidemic. Just how did Matthew and so many others come down with a disease that is supposed to be preventable with a vaccine? Tonight, we'll raise questions about the effectiveness of that vaccine. A 4-month investigation by KPBS and the Watchdog Institute found many people who had been diagnosed with whooping cough were already immunized. Joining me to talk about new research suggesting a new strain of whooping cough may be contributing to the increasing number of cases is Dr. Mark Sawyer. He is a professor of clinical pediatric infectious diseases at the UCSD School of Medicine and Rady's Children's Hospital. Doctor, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So we didn't hear a lot about whooping cough until recent years, really. First of all, remind us what this disease is all about.
Well, your grandparents know all about whooping cough because back in the 40s and 50s, every child had it. And it's a respiratory infection which leads to a very protracted and difficult cough, which often ends with a whoop, and that's where the name comes from.
Now, we do have a vaccine that's available, and most kids get immunized. What is the new research suggesting with regard to why this vaccine may be losing some of its punch?
Well, starting with the California outbreak in 2010, we recognized that more and more people were getting the whooping cough even when vaccinated, as you pointed out. And as we've learned more about that in the coming years, I think it's become clear that that's because we've switched vaccines in the 1990s and 2000s to a different type of vaccine, and it's not working as well.
Now, in our investigation back in 2010, we also traveled to the Netherlands, where we met with the government scientist. His name is Dr. Frits Moy, and he had been publishing reports since 1998 that suggested perhaps the strain is changing, the strain of whooping cough, and that was leading to increased vaccine failure. And again, he'd been doing this since 1998. I know other countries have also made note of this changing strain. Why do you think the U.S. has been slower to talk about this or even to make this discovery?
Well, I know the CDC investigators were aware of his work in the changing strain, and they went back and looked at strains causing outbreaks in the mid-2000s in the United States, and they were not due to those strains. Now, whether the more recent outbreaks are due to changes, I don't think we even know yet.
And what's happening with regard to developing a new vaccine?
Well, I think the signal's been sent that we need a new vaccine, starting in 2010 with the increased cases, which have continued around the United States. There have been a number of outbreaks since then. So I think we know now that we need a new vaccine, that the one we switched to, although it had fewer side effects, which is the reason we changed to it, it's not working well enough. So the companies know that we need a new vaccine, and the scientists know that as well.
Now, this could potentially take years. I know you're also on the Centers for Disease Control's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. How is that committee addressing this issue now?
Well, that committee can only make recommendations on vaccines we have now. So we're making recommendations. We're looking particularly at whether adults need a booster dose of the vaccine that some have now received for one time only. And you're likely to see a recommendation for that in the very short term. But until we get a new vaccine, that committee can't really act and make brand new recommendations until we know more about what's coming.
Okay, Dr. Mark Sawyer, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. On the next News Hour, the latest news, analysis, and in-depth reporting you've come to expect from our team. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
The weather is going to start warming up a bit over the next couple of days. We'll see some clouds in the coastal areas tomorrow, but it'll clear out as the week goes on. Same story for the inland valleys. Temperatures up to about 70 by Valentine's Day. Sunny up in the mountains with temperatures reaching into the mid-50s. It will reach the mid-70s with plenty of sunshine out in the desert. Just in time for Valentine's Day, the Kiss is back in San Diego, arriving at the waterfront this morning. The 25-foot bronze statue depicts a sailor stealing a kiss from a nurse at the end of World War II. It should be completely installed by Valentine's Day. A dedication ceremony is slated for Saturday morning. $1 million was raised to pay for the statue through the Save the Kiss campaign. Raymond Chandler and Dr. Seuss were both regulars at the Whaling Bar at La Jolla's La Valencia Hotel. The hotel's owners want to do some renovations, and this Valentine's Day will be the last chance that patrons have to visit the cocktail lounge. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando reminisces about the bar.
San Diego City beat writer D.A. Kolodenko was drawn to the Whaling Bar back in the 1980s.
I knew that a lot of famous writers used to hang out here. I mean, people like Norman Mailer and Gore Vidal, and of course Raymond Chandler, the famous author of detective novels like The Long Goodbye and The Big Sleep.
The Whaling Bar at the La Valencia Hotel has been an icon for some 6 decades. In addition to the famous celebrities who drank in the cozy booths, Wing Howard created murals for the bar in exchange for drinks. And artist Raul Guerrero paid tribute to the bar in a series of paintings. The bar also created a celebrity of its own in Ray Arcibel.
I work in La Valencia Hotel for 52 years. I'm a bartender. So the reason I have this on the bottom, so when you pour it, you could see the mixture.
What attracts me to this bar is Ray. Ray is truly, as his name says, he's a ray of sunshine. He is dedicated, devoted. He's a true expert in his area.
Fran Neiswanger is a patron who says we'll be losing 2 icons, the bar and Ray.
I'm a little bit more sentimental about it. it kind of hurt my feeling because I'm not the only one, because a lot of people, they like to see the old ways that they was used to.
And so with the passing of this bar, we lose all of the history of this bar. It's not only these beautiful lamps and booths and fixtures and the excellent servers who have worked here for multiple decades. It's not only all of the trappings of the Whaling Bar that we lose because it's closing. It's because we lose an era and our connection to that era.
So this Valentine's Day, San Diego will be saying goodbye to a little piece of its history. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
The Whaling Bar's last call will be on Thursday night. Recapping tonight's top stories, Pope Benedict XVI is stepping down for health reasons. The former Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger says the Pope lacks the strength to fulfill his duty as leader of 1 billion Catholics worldwide. He is 85 years old. Accused gunman Christopher Dorner could face the death penalty under a capital murder charge filed today by the Riverside County District Attorney. Dorner is suspected of killing a Riverside police officer last week and of killing a couple in Irvine. He is still at large. A $1 million reward has been offered. You can find tonight's stories and download the KPBS app all on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.